Good. Well, oppression that produces, well, congressmen like Ilhan Omar, for example. As the radical left tries to tear down the very foundation of the country, the Supreme Court today gave President Trump another victory, a major victory. The court ruled 7-2, allowing employers to refuse on religious grounds to cover contraceptives under Obamacare. Over the past few weeks, the Supreme Court has sided with the president on a number of major issues, including speedy deportations, border wall funding, the Electoral College, and rights for religious schools. President Trump today welcomed Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador to the White House. The president hailed the relationship between the United States and Mexico, and he said it has never been better.
The relationship between the United States and Mexico has never been closer than it is right now. And as the president said a little while ago, people were betting against that. They were actually betting against that. But it's never been stronger, never been closer. We're doing a tremendous job together. We're cherished friends, partners, and neighbors. Our cooperation is founded on mutual trust and mutual respect between the two of us and between our two countries. And we honor the great dignity of both nations.
Our first guest has been in attendance at the meetings between President Trump and Mexican President López Obrador. Joining us tonight is the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien. Robert, it's great to have you with us, and this is an extraordinary moment. Give us a sense of how those talks have gone, and at first, if you will, just the atmosphere and the tone between these two men.
Well, thank you for having me on, Lou. It's a very warm day here in Washington, and the warmth here outside the White House is matched by the warmth inside between the two presidents. The meetings have been extraordinarily cordial between the presidents and the two delegations. We're making a lot of progress on various issues, but President López Obrador and President Trump have really hit it off. You could see that earlier when they were in the Rose Garden together. And we have a great relationship with Mexico. As the president said, it's never been better. And what a fantastic visit by the president. I know you talked about monuments earlier. One of the nice things is that President López Obrador earlier this morning went out to the Lincoln Memorial and placed a wreath in front of Abraham Lincoln. And what a gesture of friendship and respect from a socialist president down in Mexico to come up and honor President Lincoln that way. We were very pleased to see that.
And he and the president share something else that's not often given much attention in at least the left-wing media, and that is both men are populists and believe strongly in their responsibilities to the people rather than, if you will, the commercial interest of their respective nations, even though both are pursuing better times for all as a result of their efforts to get more people employed. One of the things that most people have ignored here, Robert, as you know, is that these two men are operating as partners, as we have never seen in all of the time that I have been covering both Mexico and the United States. And that goes back to Salinas and the first Bush era. This is an extraordinary thing. And by the way, I frankly am astonished that the White House Communications Department, the Trump administration, the Trump campaign doesn't make more of the fact that these two men are operating as co-equals in battling the cartels, drugs, and building a new trade relationship.
No, 100%, Lou. When you said they had something in common, I thought you were going to say they both like baseball. So when they exchanged gifts earlier today, and it's a custom when a head of state comes, they often bring a gift for the president, and the president returns the gift. They exchanged baseball bats today. So the president signed and gave a custom Louisville Slugger to President López Obrador. President López Obrador gave the president a beautiful bat that had been manufactured by some indigenous people in southern Mexico, and they're both baseball fans as well. So, yeah, look, you're right about the partnership. I mean, nobody thought this would be possible. That President López Obrador said this. He said people wouldn't believe this. But when you look at what President Trump has done, he's built the wall. Immigration is down dramatically. Now, part of that is because of the wall. Part of it is also because the Mexicans have deployed 27,000 troops to their border. And why have they done that? Look, they don't want human traffickers on their border. They don't want narco traffickers on their border. They don't want illegal immigrants from conflict zones on their border. And so we've got a lot in common with Mexico. And of course, a lot of folks in the media would ignore that. But President Lopez Obrador and President Trump are working together as partners. And I don't think we've ever had a better relationship, as you just mentioned. And you've been following this for a long time, Lou.
Indeed, and it's nice of you to point that out, Robert. The fact of the matter is that
since you were 12,
as we look at what is, God bless you for bailing me out. The fact of the matter is that both countries have an immense investment in one another. The fundamental idea behind NAFTA, when it was first created, and I was there for that moment as well, and series of moments. It was that the United States felt that if we were to enrich anyone, we should be enriching our neighbors first. That is Canada and, of course, Mexico, and that is precisely what has happened. Now, this is a more mature relationship, and the president is bringing greater balance, and Lopez Obrador is working to ensure that the cartels meet their appropriate fate. Has there been much discussion about those cartels and what both countries can do to rid this hemisphere of them?
Well, the cartels aren't just in Mexico. And with respect to Mexico, Bill Barr, our Attorney General, has been down to Mexico City a couple of times in the last several months. And Mexico has began, ever since those terrible murders of the American family in Mexico, they've extradited a number of cartel figures to the United States and have been cooperating closely with the DOJ and with Attorney General Barr. The other thing that we're doing, which Mexico truly appreciates, is the president deployed naval and Coast Guard assets and soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to the Eastern Pacific down near Baja, California, and the Caribbean. Right. And we're interdicting tons and tons and tons of cocaine and marijuana, well over $2 billion of street value of drugs that we've interdicted over the past 3 or 4 months. Some of those drugs were actually going to Mexico. So we're doing a favor to the Mexicans, but to ourselves as well, and stopping those drugs that are coming in primarily from Venezuela. So again, that's another area of partnership between the U.S. and Mexico is interdicting drugs coming from the narco regime in Venezuela.
Any new initiatives between the two leaders that you can tell us about this evening?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been doing, I'm not sure it's new, but a lot of people don't know about it. And Mexico's been hit hard with COVID. We've been hit hard with COVID. And President Lopez Obrador has been very grateful to President Trump for the support that we've given our southern neighbor on the COVID crisis. We've sent down, I think, over 600 ventilators to Mexico to help with their ICU capacity. And both countries are sharing knowledge that they're gaining regarding the COVID virus. So we're working to come out of COVID, which came from China. It hit the whole Western Hemisphere. And we're working together to come out of that COVID crisis and strengthen both the Mexican and the American economy. And again, we're blessed to have neighbors like Canada and Mexico and have a great integrated market here in the Western Hemisphere. And as we move our supply chain home from China, Mexico and Canada will play a big role in that. So it's important to us.
Ambassador Robert O'Brien, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us. My new book, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever, available for pre-order now at thetrumpcentury.com. Up next, Goldman Sachs with a dark forecast of what to expect if Joe Biden were to be the unthinkable, that is, elected. RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel joins us here next. Stay with us. Ronna, I'm sorry about that. Ronna McDaniel next. Stay with us. Well, breaking news now. A Republican PAC is spending $2 million to air an ad in Wisconsin on Joe Biden's history of lying. So hurt the economy, says none other than Goldman Sachs. Hardly a bastion of republicanism. A Goldman Sachs report says that the Biden tax plan would cut S&P 500 earnings by $20 a share. That is not good. Joining us tonight is Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, great to have you with us. And I have to say, Goldman Sachs has just handed you and the Republican Party and the president an immense gift for your advertising against Joe Biden. $20 a share is a significant down move for any market. It would be disastrous. Your reaction?
Well, I think Goldman Sachs is right, and I think the market recognizes this, and the American people should recognize Biden would be a disaster for our economy. He's never held a job outside of Washington. He's never started a business. He has no clue what he's doing. He will bankrupt this country. He's already talked about the fact that he would raise taxes, get rid of our energy independence, sign on to the Green New Deal. Today he said he would direct funds away from the police. He would be an unmitigated disaster for this country, and Americans will be poorer for his leadership if he does get elected, which we're going to stop, Lou, because we're going to reelect President Trump.
You need to get a hold of Kanye West. I mean, he got really confused in one of his latest pronouncements, saying that President Trump was in a bunker. It was a little confusing. He's going sort of the way of Joe Biden. It's Biden who spends all of his time in the basement, a bunker in his home, not the President of the United States, who is in front of the American people up close and personal more than any president in modern history.
Absolutely. I mean, Biden is hidden. He's not taking tough questions from the press. That is his whole campaign strategy. The less you get to know me, the better I'll do. I'm so excited for these debates. I cannot wait for them to go toe-to-toe. And, of course, the president has not only led through this pandemic by getting the PPE and the ventilators and the testing ramped up. He put our economy in an unprecedented position before this. He's going to lead us back from this. But he's also showing the path forward. We can be healthy and safe, but we can also open up our economy and start working again and campaigning again, because we have to start moving forward. And Biden is stuck in his basement, shivering in fear.
Ronna, if you would, stay with us through this quick commercial break. We got a hard break coming at us. I want to continue with a few issues with Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party. Ronna McDaniel on the other side of these commercials. Please stay with us. We're back with the chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel. And Ronna, let me ask you this. You've got several campaigns, whether it's the Tuberville Sessions, the contest in Alabama, whether it is Collins in Georgia, and Kobach out in Kansas. In most instances, their leading are, in the case of Sessions, just short of leading in their races, and yet they don't have the support of the Republican Party. They don't have the support of Mitch McConnell. What's going on, and why in the world aren't you supporting winners? That's, I guess, the question. Why is there this confusion in the Republican Party when you need to keep a majority?
So the RNC doesn't get involved in primaries, and I think there's wisdom in that, because it allows you to bring the competing parties together after a divisive primary.
McConnell's spending $2 million against Kobach. I'm sorry?
The RNC doesn't.
I mean, he's trying to kill the front runner in the poll.
Yeah. Yeah,
so what's the deal?
We stay neutral because we bring everybody together. It's part of our policy, and then we come back together after the primary, and we bring them together to get the winner across the finish line. We want the voters to make the decision, and they will. And Mitch has a different philosophy, and that's his choice, but we stay neutral in these primaries.
Well, he's got the same philosophy. Tuberville is pro-amnesty. He is on the wrong side of a number of issues. The president has endorsed him nonetheless, but did cancel a campaign rally with him. Kobach is as conservative as he can be, and frankly, he stands pretty tall amidst the field that is arrayed against him, despite McConnell and his rhino money. I mean, this is just, the party looks like hell to the American voter doing this stuff.
Lou, if we waste money, here's the thing, and it's tough, because if we spend money in these primaries, we may not have money for the general, and we have to keep the Senate. So we've got to focus on who gets through the primary, let the voters decide. The candidates have to raise their own money and run their own race, and that's part of vetting the good candidate, getting through, winning these divisive primaries or these competitive primaries, and then we get them across the finish line in the general. But we have to win the Senate. So our money has gone into the ground game. We're in all these battleground states, the biggest ground game we've ever built, and we're ready to win back this, keep the Senate, win back the House, and reelect the president in November. And that is what our focus is. And if I'm getting involved in all these primaries, I will waste resources that will eventually help us keep those goals in mind of winning the House, keeping the Senate, and winning the presidency. I wish I had unlimited funds. Then I get involved in everything.
I was asking you to get a hold of Mitch McConnell's right ear and kind of twist it. Ronna, thanks so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Great to see you as always. Ronna McDaniel. Please join us here tomorrow night, a special interview with the Chief of Staff of the White House, Mark Meadows. Hope you'll join us for that. And coming up, a reminder to pre-order my new book, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever. You can pre-order a copy at thetrumpcentury.com. Breaking news now, the Department of Justice has discovered new exculpatory evidence in the persecution of General Michael Flynn. This is more exculpatory evidence. It just keeps bubbling up from the Department of Justice, including notes from Peter Strzok and Dana Bowente. Well, joining us tonight to take this up, K.T. McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, Fox Business contributor. Great to have you both with us. And I want to start, first of all, K.T., right now we have two carriers in the South China Sea.
Yes.
We have a phase one deal that was historic in January, in which it now is on life support at best. Your thoughts about what is going on in the relationship between China and the United States?
Well, President Trump isn't backing down. I think this is what's so important for people to realize, that the Chinese are trying to use the pandemic. They plan to come out of this in 2 or 3 years' time, having supplanted the United States as the dominant superpower in the world. And one of the ways they're trying to do it is by seizing control of the South China Sea and basically turning the world's most important maritime trade route into an internal Chinese lake. So they get to decide who sails in the South China Sea or not. That's why it's so important that President Trump has reinforced, it made the message very clear in sending the two carriers into the South China Sea. We're not leaving the South China Sea, guys. We're not leaving the Pacific. And President Trump continues to stand up to the Chinese, which is so critical right now, especially as we're struggling with a Chinese origin pandemic.
And we're getting almost zero reporting from U.S. sources on the South China Sea, where military exercises are also being undertaken by the PLA, the Chinese Navy. What is that about?
Well, they're not. They don't. This is not a good
what
news
is that
story,
about?
right? Well, I think what that's about is that the mainstream media is not going to talk about it. It's not a good news story for the mainstream media, because it is a good news story for Donald Trump. He's standing up to him. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about schools should never open. Oh, the American economy is in the tank. Oh, this is so horrible. They don't want to talk about a strong national leader who is standing up for the interests of the United States.
And they don't want to talk, Sarah, either about the fact that Christopher Steele, the ex-MI6 agent who concocted the Russian collusion dossier and created all sorts of fiction to the consternation, obviously, of everyone who cares about truth, being ordered by a British court now to pay off the businesses that were remarked on in his dossier.
That's right, Lou. I mean, I think that was a great segue, you know, going from China to Christopher Steele, because overall what we're seeing here is a mainstream media that is refusing, like KT said, to report the truth. And what we know now is that in London, Christopher Steele was basically hammered by a magistrate, ordering him to pay over $22,000 to each of the defendants involved in the case of his dossier, which has been completely debunked. You know, Christopher Steele, it should be even so much more, because when you think about this, it's not just a piece of paper with a simple lie. This basically put our nation for the last 4 years, Christopher Steele, the Democratic National Committee, and Hillary Clinton, and everybody involved in this has really created divisiveness in our country. They lied about General Flynn. He lied about Carter Page. He lied about everybody that was involved in the dossier. And now whether or not Christopher Steele will have to make any kind of statement here in the United States, I mean, he is obviously not going to want to do that, but we know now for certain that this dossier is debunked. Unfortunately, so many people's lives, including KT's, including General Flynn, everyone else, have been turned upside down by these lies.
And not one of the SOBs is in jail, nor does he or she look like they're headed in that direction. KT, I want to go back to China. The amount of money that's being sent by Chinese immigrants back to China without, mostly untaxed, we're talking billions and billions of dollars. We're talking about Christopher Wray, who says that the FBI doesn't need any help in dealing with the espionage of the Chinese and surveillance of the Chinese and their cyber attacks in this country, all of which have gone without response by the United States, and which is costing us somewhere around $500 billion a year that the Chinese continue to steal. What in the hell is going on in this government?
You know, it's just stunning to me, because President Trump is the first guy to have stood up to the Chinese, and he's not backing down. He's not backing down no matter what happens. And to have the director of the FBI, who I think, I think he's got a lot to answer for, frankly, on why the Department of Justice and the FBI have not pursued investigating the investigators as they should have done, why the FBI never turned over that exculpatory information to
I mean, that's one side, but I'm talking about national
Yeah.
security here. I'm talking about China, and I'm talking about a damn fool sitting before Congress and saying that he's not worried about $500 billion in the theft of U.S. intellectual property. He's got plenty of people to take care of that. Meanwhile, the FBI hasn't been able to do a damn thing about cyber attacks or intellectual property theft.
But this is a really big deal, because the next war is not going to necessarily be fought with aircraft carriers and missiles. It's going to be fought in cyberspace and with economic tools. And the Chinese are developing those tools, and the intellectual property theft continues. And for the director of the FBI to say, oh, that's not much of a big deal, you bet it is a big deal, because what are they stealing? They're stealing weapon systems. They're stealing weapons designs, R&D that costs us trillions of dollars, Lou.
Sarah?
KT.
Yes,
I just wanted to go right off of what
Sarah,
KT was saying.
you
She's
get the last word.
Right. Oh, I was just going to say what KT is saying is absolutely right. Our research and development, our theft of intellectual property, Lou, is something that we have to focus on when it comes to China. And remember this, China is taking advantage of the chaos now and the divisiveness in our own country. This is what the Dems continue to instigate. So nations like China, Russia are taking advantage of that and taking advantage of this time to expand their reach in the world. And we have to be able to put a stop to that. It is a national security risk for us, and it's something that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, and somebody should tell Mark Esper, the head of the Department of Defense, that we do have combat photographers in all of the branches, and that if the national media won't cover a carrier task force in the South China Sea, then he sure as hell should be doing so. KT McFarland, Sarah Carter, thank you both. Appreciate it.